Picture two couples living 3 streets apart. Both retired this year, both have almost identical savings. Both need to pull $40,000 out of their accounts to cover their first year of retirement. By next April, one couple owes the IRS almost nothing. The other couple gets a tax bill they weren't expecting, plus a letter from Medicare saying their premiums are going up. Same amount of money, same neighborhood, same age, completely different outcome. The difference had nothing to do with luck, and nothing to do with which stocks they owned. It came down to one decision almost nobody explains clearly: which account they pulled the money from first. That single decision, the order you draw down your savings, can quietly cost or save a retired couple tens of thousands of dollars over 20 or 30 years. And almost nobody teaches it, because it doesn't sound exciting. It's not a hot stock tip. It's plumbing, but plumbing is exactly what keeps your house from flooding. And today we're going to open the walls and show you how the pipes actually work. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your retirement paycheck doesn't come from one place anymore, how the IRS treats withdrawals from different accounts in wildly different ways, and why pulling from the wrong account first can trigger 3 expensive surprises: higher taxes on your Social Security, higher Medicare premiums, and a forced tax bill years down the road that you never agreed to. Then we'll walk through a real-feeling story of a retired couple who almost made that mistake and show you exactly what changed when they didn't. Let's start with the biggest mental shift of retirement. While you're working, you have one paycheck, one tax form, and one predictable rhythm. The moment you retire, that single paycheck splits into several possible sources of income, and you become the one deciding how much comes from where. Some of that income is fixed, like Social Security and any pension you're owed. It arrives every month no matter what the stock market is doing. But the rest of it is a series of choices. You might have a traditional IRA or an old 401k from your employer. You might have a regular brokerage account you've invested in for years. And you might have a Roth IRA or Roth 401k. Each of these 3 buckets is taxed by a completely different set of rules, and that's exactly where most retirees get tripped up. Here's the part nobody tells you clearly enough. A dollar is not just a dollar once it's inside a retirement account. A dollar coming out of a traditional IRA is treated by the IRS almost like a paycheck. It's counted as ordinary income the moment you touch it. A dollar coming out of a brokerage account is usually taxed as a capital gain, meaning you're only taxed on the growth, not the whole amount, and often at a lower rate. And a dollar coming out of a Roth, once you've met the age and holding requirements, comes out completely tax-free and doesn't even show up on the IRS's radar for other calculations. Same balance sheet, 3 completely different tax personalities. I'm John, and if this is the first time you're learning how differently your own retirement accounts are actually taxed, that's exactly the kind of gap this channel exists to close. So if you want more of these clear, no-jargon breakdowns of how to protect the money you've spent decades building, stick around and consider subscribing. Now let's get back to why this matters so much. To really understand withdrawal order, you need to know about 3 landmines buried in the tax code that most people only discover after they've already stepped on one. The first landmine is Social Security taxation. Many retirees are shocked to learn that their Social Security benefit itself can be taxed. The IRS looks at something called your combined income, which is your regular taxable income, plus any tax-free interest you earned, plus half of whatever Social Security you received that year. If that combined number crosses certain thresholds, then up to 50% and eventually up to 85% of your Social Security check becomes taxable. Those thresholds are notoriously low and haven't moved with inflation in decades, which is exactly why an extra withdrawal that seems small can suddenly make a slice of your Social Security taxable that wasn't before. The second landmine has a name that sounds like alphabet soup: IRMAA, which stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. In plain English, it's a surcharge Medicare adds to your Part B and Part D premiums if your income crosses certain levels. The tricky part is that Medicare looks at your tax return from 2 years earlier. So a large withdrawal or a Roth conversion you make at 66 could quietly raise your Medicare bill at 68, long after you've forgotten about the decision that caused it. The third landmine is the required minimum distribution, or RMD. Once you reach your early 70s, the IRS stops letting you decide how much to withdraw from traditional IRAs and 401ks. It calculates a minimum amount you must take out every single year, whether you need the money or not, and taxes it as ordinary income. If you've spent your 60s letting that traditional account grow untouched, your eventual RMD can be large enough to push you into a higher bracket, trip the Social Security tax rule, and trigger IRMAA, all in the very same year. Now let's meet Derek and Renata Holt. Derek is 66, recently retired after driving a delivery route for 30 years. Renata is 63 and just wrapped up her career managing a dental office. They've done the responsible thing their whole working lives. Between them, they've built up $600,000 in traditional retirement accounts, $260,000 in a regular brokerage account they've invested in since their 30s, and $180,000 in Roth accounts they started contributing to more recently. They don't have a pension. They want roughly $70,000 a year to live comfortably, visit their daughter in Colorado, and keep the house in good shape. When Derek first sat down to plan their withdrawals, his instinct was simple: pull from whichever account had the biggest balance. That meant the traditional IRA. It felt logical. It's also almost exactly backwards, and here's why. Derek and Renata are planning to delay claiming Social Security for a few years, so their eventual monthly checks are larger. That means, in these early retirement years, their only taxable income is whatever they choose to withdraw. If Derek pulls $70,000 straight out of the traditional IRA, all of it gets stacked on as ordinary income, likely pushing them into a higher bracket than necessary, all while their Roth account sits untouched, and their brokerage account, the one taxed most gently, barely gets used at all. Instead, here's the order that actually protects them. First, they draw a good portion of their spending money from the brokerage account, since selling investments there mostly triggers capital gains, which are taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income, and can sometimes fall into a bracket taxed at 0% if their total income stays low enough that year. Second, they add a carefully measured amount of traditional IRA withdrawals on top, just enough to fill up the lower tax brackets without spilling into a much higher one. In some years, instead of simply withdrawing from the IRA, they convert a portion of it directly into a Roth, paying tax now while their income is low, which permanently moves that money into the tax-free bucket for the future. Third, they leave the Roth account almost completely untouched during these years, letting it compound quietly in the background. That Roth becomes their emergency fund and their flexibility fund, the account they can tap for a big one-time expense without dragging their taxable income up at all. Notice what this really is. It's not about avoiding taxes forever. It's about smoothing them out, paying a manageable amount now instead of a painful amount later. By the time Derek and Renata reach their early 70s and required minimum distributions kick in, their traditional account is smaller than it would have been, because they've spent a decade quietly shrinking it on their own terms, instead of letting the IRS force the issue all at once. Once they do start claiming Social Security, the math shifts again. Now they have guaranteed monthly income arriving whether they touch their savings or not. Every additional dollar they pull from the traditional IRA at this stage is more likely to make a slice of that Social Security check taxable, so the order adjusts. Any required minimum distribution comes out first, because that part isn't optional. If they need more than that, plus their Social Security, they lean on the brokerage account next. And the Roth, still growing quietly in the background, stays reserved for the years when a big, unavoidable expense shows up. A new roof, a medical bill, help for a grandchild, without it disturbing their tax bracket or their Medicare premium at all. Here's the simplest way to carry this lesson home. Think of your retirement accounts less like one big pile of money and more like 3 different tools in a toolbox, each suited for a different job. The brokerage account is your flexible, lightly taxed workhorse. The traditional IRA is powerful but needs to be used carefully, a little at a time so it doesn't trigger a chain reaction of extra taxes. And the Roth is the tool you protect, the one you save for exactly the moment you need it most, because nothing that comes out of it disturbs anything else in the picture. If there's one habit worth building starting today, it's this. Before you decide which account to pull money from this year, ask not which account has the most money in it, but which withdrawal does the least damage to everything else. Your tax bracket, your Social Security, and your Medicare premiums, all at once. That one question, asked every single year, is often the difference between a retirement where your savings quietly run out sooner than planned and one where they stretch further than you expected, with less handed over to the IRS along the way. This video is meant to help you understand the landscape, not replace a conversation with a qualified tax professional or financial planner who knows your full picture, your state taxes, and your health. But now you're walking into that conversation with the right questions instead of just a stack of account statements. You've spent 30, 40, maybe 50 years building these accounts, one paycheck at a time. The order you draw them down deserves just as much care as the effort it took to build them in the first place. If this helped you see your own retirement accounts a little differently, there's another video on this channel that walks through exactly when it makes sense to claim Social Security early versus waiting, and it pairs perfectly with everything you just learned. I'll see you there.